Welcome to another Reading Choral Society choral distancing rehearsal. It's Tuesday. I'm here to let you know that it's Tuesday. I've heard some people are losing track of which day of the week it is. A composer friend of mine has made himself t-shirts because he doesn't have his choirs on different nights and various jobs helping him keep track of what day of the week it is. So he puts on his Monday shirt on Mondays, and today I assume, if he hasn't lost track, that he is wearing his Tuesday shirt. We have 2 rehearsals left, tonight and next week, in what would have been our regular season of rehearsals. I'm aware that next week would have been actually quite a few rehearsals leading up to our Verdi Requiem project. I'm hearing a lot of people talking about struggling with whether or not it's okay to grieve something small. I mean, losing a concert like this isn't exactly a matter of life and death, but it's still something that affects us. And I think if you hold your standards too high and try to think, well, this is nothing compared to what other people are facing, I shouldn't be bothered. I think it's still healthy and okay to take a moment to mourn this concert that we were looking forward to that we're not going to get to do next weekend. We are still talking and on track, not to do it this coming season, it looks like, but really hoping to pick up where we left off and to perform that with the Reading Symphony, possibly in the following season. I'll be talking more about that with the whole choir as we figure out what it looks like to be a choir in whatever our new reality is next season and going into the future. We have a lot to figure out, and I hope you will enthusiastically join me and the board and Susie in figuring these things out and figuring out what the future of this organization is. I'm optimistic that we'll find ways to continue delivering on our mission. We may be creative. At the moment, we're still looking at our concerts in November and March and May next season. We're working up various plans for how we might deal with those, but some of the music is staying the same, and working towards our November concert. Today, I have for you a special arrangement of our own national anthem. That's actually an arrangement that I made for us to sing at sporting events, which I'm hoping we will pick up and start doing a little bit more in coming seasons. And I thought if we add that into our Around the World in 80 Minutes concert, it would make a fun way of arriving back in the United States. If we've gone around heading eastward into the rising sun, we can, I don't know if you know, but the national anthem was originally composed in England. And it was written as a drinking song. Many of you may have heard this, it's not completely unknown. And it was actually Francis Scott Key writing his patriotic poem while watching the bombing of Fort McHenry that wrote it to that rhythm, and it was set to that music. However, I was thinking in our Around the World in 80 Minutes, we could pass through England and pick up the melody, and a secret melody that we steal from England. And then as we work our way around the world, when we land back on the west coast of the United States, not quite back to Reading yet, so not quite done with our concert, but we could land in our home country and sing the national anthem. And this is the arrangement I would like to do. I've already got some learning tracks, and we'll get to that in a minute. So because it's my arrangement, and I'm leading these rehearsals, that's an awful lot of Graham. I'm once again very grateful that we've got our section leaders providing various materials for us along the way. And today, it is the alto section leader's turn, so I'm going to hand it over to Marcelin to lead you in some warm-ups.
Hello, Reading Choral Society. It is so wonderful to be speaking to you on this lovely day. I hope you're all staying healthy and just doing well in these weird and unusual times. I am here to warm you up and get you ready for rehearsal. Just as a quick note first though, we have pet birds. So if you hear any weird chirping noises or random sound effects, that would be the African gray in the background. So sorry, please ignore them. So first things first, I would like to do a bit of a physical warm-up. It's gonna be very simple and light, but if you see me doing anything that you think you can't do or that would hurt you, please don't do it. But First things first, we're gonna get our bodies ready for singing and do a physical warm-up. This is gonna be very light, it shouldn't hurt you, but if you see me doing anything... So first things first, we're gonna get our bodies ready for singing by doing a little bit of a physical warm-up. So I will demonstrate first and then I'll have you do it with me. If you see me doing anything that you don't think you can do, then please skip it, but I welcome you to try these simple exercises. So the first one we're gonna do is called a Ragdoll roll-up, and this is great for posture. You know, when you're sitting at a computer all day, your shoulders get all tense and your back rounds a little bit, and that's not good for singing. So this is gonna help you align your body so that you can sing a little better. So what we're gonna do, let me demonstrate first. So we're going to Ragdoll forward, bending at your hips, and just kind of dangle here for a few minutes, or seconds, not minutes. Don't go that long, you'll get lightheaded. Then you're going to bring your head up so that your whole spine is elongated with a flat back, and then you're gonna roll up slowly into a perfect standing posture. Your shoulders should feel expanded, your neck should feel long, and that's how we do a ragdoll. So don't forget to breathe while you're doing this, but let's all do it together. Take a deep breath in and fall forward gently and slowly. Good. Take another deep breath while you're down here. Now bring your head up so it's in line with the rest of your spine and you have a flat back. Take another breath here. And now we slowly roll up. Feel your shoulders expand. Feel your neck get a little bit longer. And there you go. This next exercise that we're gonna do is one of my favorites. I like to call it the prayer hands breathing expansion. So what you're going to do is take your hands in like a prayer position, put it around your chest, and you're going to inhale and bring your hands up above your head slowly. When you get to the very top, you're going to hold your breath for a few seconds, turn your hands out, and then exhale as they go down. And as you do this, you should feel your chest expand, your shoulders expand, and your rib cage expand. It feels very good, so let's try it together. Prayer hands, breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Turn out, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now that our bodies are feeling aligned and ready for singing, let's do some actual singing. We're gonna start with a light lip trill, one of these. If you can't do one of those, you can do a hum instead. If you are choosing to do the hum, make sure that the inside of your mouth is lifted. So we have this nice warm opera kind of sound. So the exercise sounds like this. We're going sol, mi, do, moving down in half steps. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Last one. This next exercise that we're going to do will be using our full singing voice, and it's gonna get our voices moving a little bit more. The The words we will be saying are sui, ooey, oo. And it sounds like this. Sol, fa, mi, re, do. Sui, ooey, oo. Let's try it together. 1, 2, ready, go. This next warm-up is to get our breath flowing, to create a nice legato line, but also to work our agility a bit more. Here's what it sounds like. The words we are saying are do be. So listen to it. Do be, do be, do be, do be, do. Listen again. Do be, do be, do be, do be, do. Your turn to try it. We're going to be moving up in half steps, and don't forget to breathe deeply and early so you have plenty of breath to get through. 2, ready, go. Do be, do be, do be, do be, do. Do be, do be, do be, do be, do. Do be, do be, do. This next warm-up is going to add a bit of range expansion, get that range going there. Sounds like this. The solfege is do, sol, mi, re, do. And we're saying si, ya. So let me demonstrate for you for a couple times. Si, ya. Again. Si, ya. Notice how I'm using the Y in between the C and the ah to give a nice little slide up to the top note. That's going to be very nice and relaxing for your voice. So I want you to really accentuate that slide. Here we go. We're going to be moving up in half steps. We are almost done with the warm-up. Thank you so much for sticking in there and singing with me. This next one is going to be a bit of a challenge. It's going to stretch your range and also your agility, but I think we've done something similar in choir, so you should be able to pick it up rather quickly, hopefully. Let me demonstrate for you, and then I'll break it down. Listen again. Let me break it down for you. It's an octave jump. Do, do, little turnaround. Ti, do, re, and then we fall down the scale. Do, ti, do, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Again, we're going to use the Y in between the C and the Ah to give us a nice smooth transition to the top note. And you're going to just kind of let that scale fall out of your mouth. Don't worry about hitting every note. If you can, that's great, but if not, don't worry about it. And don't worry if your voice cracks a little bit. We're going through a lot of register shifts here, and that is perfectly normal as long as it doesn't hurt. So we're gonna start way down here to make sure we get everybody fully warmed up. If it's too low or too high for you at any point, just drop out or switch octaves. And let's try it together. We're gonna move up in half steps, and I'm gonna give you a gesture. I'm gonna go boop when you're ready to fall down the scale. All right, here we go. Ready, go. To end our warm-up with just a quick little siren. You can either do it on a lip trill or not, and here's what that sounds like. I know it sounds very silly, but it is very good for relaxing your voice after doing anything difficult like a heavy, intense warm-up. So join me in doing a siren. Go high, go low, explore your whole range, be silly with it. Woo! Do that for as long as you want or need. And that is our warm-up for this week. Thank you so much for singing with me. I appreciate you all so much, and I look forward to seeing you in a few months.
Thanks so much, Marceline. Hope you're doing all right finishing up classes at Temple. It's been tricky for me to be teaching online at Kutztown, and I know it's tricky for the students too. Not what we had planned on. Well, I want to welcome you all in the tour of my house to what Robin and I have sort of created as our office. And here we are. And actually, Robin has been quarantined in the house with me, and you may not be aware from these videos, but she's been here the whole time.
Hi, Reading Choral Society. How are you? I miss seeing you. I know I don't get to see you very often, but hope you're doing okay. And I couldn't help overhearing what Graham was saying at the beginning of this video about grieving for concerts and feeling like, is that really okay. It's, in the grand scheme of things. And I'll just throw out there that I have had a lot of my concerts canceled. And while I'm grateful that I'm home and safe and that nobody is being put at risk, it's also really sad. And I don't know how many of those opportunities will cycle back around in the future. So if you're feeling like that, know that there are a lot of people out there who understand. And let's just hold on to the idea that we will be singing again together before too much longer. And keep taking care of yourselves. Nice to see you.
All right, well, I should get on with the rehearsal, so...
Right, okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to get the Star Spangled Banner arrangement that I made for the Red and Choral Society in 2017 up on the screen for you, and on we go. So, art has a tough time keeping track of itself. It expresses emotion. It's a great thing for human culture, but it's also just inextricably tied up in how we feel and in human politics. So I'm aware that I have us working on the Star Spangled Banner at a time when a lot of people are critical of the way various aspects of the government are handling various aspects of this pandemic. Nonetheless, I, as an American, have always felt that we criticize what we love and respect the most. And so I may have my own criticisms there, and I'm sure some of you do in one direction or another, and we may not all agree, but I hope we can all agree that we are American citizens for better or worse from day to day, and so I'm not going to make too much of a deal out of doing the national anthem. I hope that's okay with you, and you can come to the same sort of feeling that I am, that it's all right to work on it in this context, and that doesn't bother you too much. I wanted to just give a little history before we get going. You may well know some of this stuff, but just quickly going over it, you can see here on my screen the first printed version of the Star Spangled Banner. It was actually composed originally in 1780 by John Stafford Smith. As I alluded in the introduction, he was an Englishman. He wrote it as the anacreontic song, and it was for a society of gentlemen musicians in London. So I'll show you a little bit of the original music here. This is an old print of John Stafford Smith's anacreontic song, and you can see sort of what's going on here. Pardon the random key I pick, but you've got the basic idea. It's sort of similar to what we're used to today, but there are some little differences you might enjoy. I'll sing a little bit of it for you. To Anacreon in heaven, where he fat in full glee, a few sons of harmony sent a petition that he their inspirer and patron would be. When his answer arrived from the jolly old Grecian, you get the basic idea. Voice, fiddle, and flute no longer be mute. I'll lend you my name and inspire you to boot. So this was sort of their anthem for their society of musicians. It was a very popular tune around in England and in the United States at that time, and Francis Scott Key was aware of it. So in 1814, he was actually on a boat. This is the War of 1812, not the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, and Francis Scott Key had been sent out under a flag of truce to negotiate a prisoner exchange, and he ended up overhearing some talk about the shelling of Fort McHenry in Baltimore, and so they decided they couldn't release him under the flag of truce until after they had made that attack. So he was actually on a British ship watching the shelling of his own country's fort, and he was so inspired by what he saw that he wrote this poem. You can see now this is actually the manuscript of the poem that he wrote. It's got 4 verses, so we're only really familiar with the first one usually. Just to give you a little zoom in there. It's not a very good image, but you can see, oh say can you see, and then he had through, and he changed it to by the dawn, so it's kind of fun to see a little bit of that process there. Yeah. So, I'm going to back myself out of that, and here is a partly contemporary artist rendering of the bombing of Fort McHenry. So you can imagine Francis Scott Key out on one of those boats watching, and it was such a fearsome bombardment that he wasn't sure if the fort would stand, and it was the seeing the flag still flying after it was over that so inspired this poem to be written to the tune. And here, just sharing with you, I found this really fascinating while I was researching the song. This is the flag that was flying over Fort McHenry. There's a lot of it missing. You can see it's in a museum here, and they've got little stripes underneath so that it doesn't look like it's been torn off. There were a lot of souvenirs taken from the flag. But if you count up the stars and stripes, you will notice there were 15. By the War of 1812, we had added 2 states to the Union. Does anyone know what they are? A little trivia moment. Vermont and Kentucky. So that's actually the literal Star-Spangled Banner that the poem and therefore our national anthem was written about. Just thought you would enjoy a little taste of that history. So I am going to switch over to my arrangement and show that to you on the screen. There you go. 1780, the original music to Anacreon in Heaven. And Francis Scott Key actually titled his poem Defense of Fort McHenry, which he wrote in 1814. A little bit about my arrangement before we get going, just so you know what you're in for. Some of you do already, because we worked on it a bit in 2017. I specifically arranged this so that the Reading Choral Society would have some good material for singing at ball games. One of the issues I've often noticed about national anthem, and I've sung the national anthem as a soloist and as a part of choirs at a lot of ball games, is the situation that you're in. I don't know if you're aware of this, but a lot of recording engineers, when they're making recordings, they have some decisions to make, not just in favor of quality. You would expect it to be quality. But in reality, you have to think about how people are going to listen to it. If you're listening to something on the radio, or on a CD or a cassette tape, or at this point probably your iTunes, in your car, the quality of your speakers is going to be a lot less, unless you've really souped your car up. And there's going to be a lot of background noise from the road, so you're probably going to have it turned up and lower lo-fi, lower quality, lower fidelity. And actually, recording engineers will take that into account. If they turn out a really high-quality recording, you might, what percentage of their market would actually have really great speakers set up in the room, laid out in sort of a surround sound setup, good subwoofer, that sort of thing. Only really the audiophiles are going to do that. And so sometimes they'll make a recording specifically targeting that part of the audience. But if you stick that on in the car, you miss a lot of what's going on, and which can be helped by compressing the sound. So that's sort of what I was trying to do with this national anthem arrangement. I'm having sung it in these big stadiums. Singing out of doors without an acoustic to support you, that's tough. Singing in a big stadium where you're trying to get picked up by microphones that are then being broadcast on the stadium sound system to all the stands, that definitely is a hurdle to jump over. And a lot of the arrangements of the national anthem were not made with those things in mind. So I made this one for us, attempting to sort of get those things in mind. There's actually one more element that I kept in mind, which is sometimes the arrangements can get really fancy. You've got a lot of sports fans there. They're quite happy to sing through the national anthem. It's part of the tradition. It's part of the ball game. But they are there for a ball game. And when an arrangement gets too inside of itself and it's really slow or goes on ornamentally too long, I think that often sells short the group. And part of why I would take a choral society to sing the national anthem at a ball game is to, get the arts out, make those connections, reach a new audience, and to be heard. And so I don't want to do that by not being aware of the context. So this is a relatively short and sweet, and it sits pretty high in the voice. You'll see my introduction there at the beginning is basically talking about that. I apologize. It sits quite high. If there are any notes that are out of range for you, you can, if you're a gentleman, you may sing them in falsetto. If you are a soprano, you may drop down to a lower part briefly, because you've got nowhere left to go. So that's the basic idea. It's meant to be relatively fast, relatively high and loud, and it's designed for out of doors. Now, we can do it in the concert hall, and I think it's a decent arrangement. I've got some things going on here, and let me take you on a tour. I have us start out relatively quick in unison octaves. So we're all just singing the melody at the beginning. Dum da dum 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 dum, the same one that you're familiar with. I've chosen some particular rhythms. I chose to go with triplets. You can sometimes do those as dotted. And then we get down to the second system, and I slow it down. Whose broad stripes? And then we finally break into harmony on 3 fermatas. And then I've got that little dotted line there. That's because I don't want anyone to breathe. Choral breath if we need to. You can sneak a breath, stagger breathe, but no group breaths, no actual choral breaths. And then back to tempo through the perilous fight or the ram. And I've got straight rhythms there versus some of the triplet rhythms, so keep an eye out for that as you're learning it. And then we're in harmony for the rest of it. And I tried to have a bit of fun to really show off what the Reading Choral Society can do. Here we are. We were gallantly streaming, and we end up coming down to unison octaves on the streaming. And then I have upper harmony, tenors high in their registers, altos and sopranos split, so we have this close harmony upper cluster. And then on bursting in air, the alto twos and upward scale, the bass ones come in, bursting down from above like the bombs. I was having a lot of fun. I was a younger man by several years. It gave proof. Got a couple little effects there. I've got a sort of staccato, mezzo staccato for the altos and basses, proof, and then you just get out of the way. Not proof, not really clipped, but proof. And the sopranos and the tenors do a little bit of a duet, and night, we really cling to that with the tenuto. We're back in harmony. This time I dropped the sopranos out for a minute, and we dropped the dynamic. The only time in the piece we really dropped the dynamic to mezzo piano. But big crescendo, slowing down a little bit on banner, yet wave. And then the ending, or the land of the free and the home of the brave. And I went for a barbershop-style ending, so the altos really tank up, stagger breathe if you need to, and hold that note, and all the harmonies shift around. This, I think, was my one mistake. We did sing this at a hockey game, and people think you've reached the end if you don't come in fast. So when we get to "And the Home of the Brave," I'm going to learn my lesson. And we're going to go, "Home of the Brave," with no writ before we get there, because otherwise people will think we're done. Even then, they might be applauding if it's at a ball game. I would like us to be able to sing this at ball games in the future and to have it in our repertoire. Ideally, eventually, for those of us that feel able, memorized, because then we can just tank it out at a ball game, and that makes a good impression. So it's well worth working on for many, many reasons. But as I mentioned, I would also like to involve it in our Around the World in 80 Minutes once we land on the West Coast, should I stick to the route that I currently have planned and am planning. So that's what we've got. Note that a lot of it definitely sits high. That land of the free there basses, everyone's in octave unison going all the way up to an F. If you got to flip over into falsetto or drop out a little bit, don't worry. And then we're back into harmony to the end. So that's just a quick little tour of the piece. I've actually got, I'm going to take you on a playthrough in a minute. And that will be a MIDI version of what I've got so that you can listen to how it all fits together, and that'll be the end of this video. And then I'll send you off to the learning tracks that I made. I just made one for each voice part, so the Divisi and the soprano and the alto. I think I even have a little Divisi in the tenor and bass at one moment. Yeah, breaking into 7 parts sometimes. Never quite 8, I think. I will have for you, in those Divisi moments, just a single track with both notes. So hopefully if you're a 2 or a 1, you'll pick out the higher or the lower depending on what's going on. And I made those learning tracks by using the MIDI files. What I did was I put all the other parts that aren't yours on pizzicato strings, so it's just plucked for the context, and your part is sustained like in the voice. Hopefully that's something you can pick out. I didn't do the left ear, right ear thing with this. But I'm not going to remake them at this stage unless we need to. So I hope those are useful. Let's listen to it right now. Well, thanks for listening through to that with me. As always, links down below. You'll find a link to a score, and you'll find a link to a YouTube playlist that has all of the learning tracks. So I hope you enjoy getting to know this arrangement. If you don't, since I'm the arranger, just don't tell me. I'm thinking of you all lots. I appreciate some of you reached out and emailed me just to check in and say how you were doing, and I really enjoyed that. And so anyone else who hasn't done that, please consider yourself warmly invited. GBIER at readingchoral.org. That's gbeer@readingchoral.org, and I really enjoy hearing from you. I'm thinking about each and every one of you and missing you and appreciating you, even if you've recently joined the choir and you're not sure if I really know who you are yet. You're part of our family, and I appreciate you checking in with these videos. We'll do one more rehearsal video next week, just to wrap up the season. Got a surprise for you there. Tune in next week. And until then, stay safe.